Welcome back and thank you for staying with us. Now, President Cyril Ramaphosa and his predecessor, Jacob Zuma, are squaring off in court today. Ramaphosa wants the court to block Zuma's private prosecution bid. Zuma claims Ramaphosa is an accessory after the fact in alleged criminality by prosecutor Billy Downer. Now, let's go to eNCA reporter Moloko Moloto, who is in the High Court in Johannesburg, and he joins us now live to give us more details on what's happened so far. So, Moloko, of course, Ramaphosa's lawyers, because he is the applicant, started their argument first. What have they put forward so far to the full bench of judges?
Well, indeed, the court started just after 10 o'clock this morning, and it is a matter between the President of the Republic, who is challenging his predecessor, Jacob Zuma. Essentially, he wants the High Court today, one, to stop Mr. Zuma from proceeding with that private prosecution, meaning that he has charged President Cyril Ramaphosa criminally, and that matter is scheduled to take place on the 19th of January in the very same criminal, in the same court, but in the criminal court. Now, the second part of President Cyril Ramaphosa's urgent application, which is being heard today, is that he would want to challenge the validity and the constitutionality of the non-prosecution certificate that was issued by the Director of Public Prosecution in KwaZulu-Natal, but also he wants to challenge the summons that were issued by the Register of the High Court here in favor of Mr. Zuma to proceed with that private prosecution. So that is where the argument was. It started with the lawyer representing President Cyril Ramaphosa, Mr. Advocate Moloko Moloto, SC, who basically tried to argue that basically the president is saying he doesn't want to be prosecuted on the basis of an unconstitutional and unlawful prosecution, as he describes that particular private prosecution by Mr. Zuma. He says if that criminal prosecution commences on the 19th of January, he will suffer irreparable harm and damage, in that he would be expected personally to appear there as a criminally charged person. And that would have implications in that, firstly, he is the President of the Republic. That will reflect on the image of the government, but also in the governing party where he is President of the African National Congress. There is a step aside rule, and that would mean that he must step aside. Importantly, the president, through his lawyer, says, look, it doesn't mean that I don't want to be held accountable. What I am saying, that is the president basically, is that he wants to be prosecuted if there is a case, only if the process is legitimate, if the process is constitutional and legally sound. And at this point in time, he believes that this whole process by Mr. Zuma doesn't meet the legal and constitutional muster.
Yeah, and Moloko, so far, ever since the announcement by the former president through his foundation last December, it was actually during conference, ever since his announcement that he would actually take this route against President Cyril Ramaphosa, you spoke to the spokesperson of the foundation this morning. Are they still sticking to their guns? Do they think that the president should be the one that faces private prosecution as well?
So maybe just to simplify things for people who may not be able to connect where actually this case started. This is related to the prosecution that Mr. Zuma wanted to be effected on News 24 journalist Karen Mon and Mr. Advocate William John Downer, who is known as Billy Downer, who is a prosecutor in a separate case of corruption involving Mr. Zuma. Mr. Zuma wanted the two to be prosecuted. Why? Because he believed that they leaked his medical certificate. He said that was in contravention of the provisions of the National Prosecuting Authority Act. Now, the National Prosecuting Authority declined to prosecute the two. Now, it meant that Mr. Zuma then wanted the NPA to issue the so-called non-prosecution certificate, and the NPA, or specifically the Director of Public Prosecution in KwaZulu-Natal, Ms. Zungu, first in June last year issued a certificate to say that she is not going to prosecute Mr. Billy Downer. And later, Mr. Zuma went back to the Director of Public Prosecution. He wanted another a certificate, and it was issued this time around in November, and it was basically saying that the Director of Public Prosecution saying that she's not going to prosecute any person. And that was the opportunity created for Mr. Zuma to say, okay, he, as Mr. Zuma, in 2021, he wrote to President Cyril Ramaphosa sometime, I think in August, to complain about the conduct of Mr. Downer and some officials within the NPA, to say they leaked his medical certificate, and he wanted Ramaphosa to institute an investigation or an inquiry. The president didn't do that, otherwise he referred that to the Minister of Justice. So it is that which got the president in trouble, seemingly, according to Mr. Zuma. He wants him prosecuted for not instituting that particular inquiry. This is why we are here today. The president says, I'm not the one who leaked that particular certificate.
All right. Well, Moloko, let me let you go back. I know in about 7 minutes' time, when I look at my clock, you're expected to go back in there. Judge Sutherland did say 11:45, you'll be back in court. So thank you, Moloko Moloto, outside the High Court in Johannesburg for us. And you might remember the president also saying, why isn't the former president going after the Minister of Justice? Because that's the person that the president had actually taken the matter up with and said should sort out that letter that Moloko was talking about from August of 2021.